All right, welcome everybody. My name is Gina Aiken, and I'm here with Natalie Olson. Welcome everybody to our second part of our nutrition series. We are pairing nutrition webinars with the Get Fit program this year. Last month we featured bone health, and Natalie offered a lot of important information about what we can do to keep our bones healthy and strong. And we had a great discussion there and a lot of great turnout. I will put in the chat here if you happen to have missed that uh, presentation and you want to go back and listen there, that's the link to our wellness webpage. If you scroll all the way down, you will find a link to the recording. And of course, we're recording today's session as well. We will also be sharing PowerPoint slides, so you don't have to, write furiously. You can just listen and absorb the information. So today we're talking about nutrition for Hello Heart, improving cholesterol and blood pressure. And so like last time, we connected to the hinge health. This time we're connecting to another new benefit. And if you can go back, Natalie, to the slide right before that, it's our Hello Heart. There we go. That's our new digital benefit from Hello Heart. It is a blood pressure unit that you can order. It's a blood pressure platform. And we looked, this is extremely popular. As of December, we had over 2,500 people from the TxDOT plan enrolled in Hello Heart. So I'm sure that number has increased dramatically. But, if you meet the certain criteria that you see listed below, you can sign up for the program. You can get your own blood pressure unit. There's a little heart. Thanks for that heart emoji. And one will come to you. You'll be able to sync that with your phone, Bluetooth it. And it's great because you'll be able to share that information with your physician if you're concerned about your readings. So just you can scan that to enroll. I know we have a lot of people been using mine for 4 days now, ordered mine yesterday. Thank you. Good to know. So again, we're connecting these programs with a benefit. So let's get started. So as I mentioned, Natalie Olson, she's our registered dietitian. She's going to be leading our discussion. Like last time, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and I'll be keeping track of those. And she's going to address them at the end. And we do love to see you all supporting and motivating each other through comments in the chat, but kind of refrain from giving some advice or answering someone's question. We're leaving those answers up to our expert, Natalie. So you can cheer people on, but in the interest of time and everything, we want to rely on Natalie's expertise. So thank you ahead of time for that request. So I am going to turn it over to Natalie.
Perfect. Thank you, Gina. And welcome, everybody. Welcome back for those who joined last month's seminar on bone health. And for those that didn't and aren't familiar with me, I'm Natalie Olson. I am a functional medicine dietitian and certified exercise physiologist. And I'm in Austin, Texas. And I have a private practice where I work with patients one-on-one, and I do things like this for groups, seminars and group trainings and things like that, all around nutrition and lifestyle. So let's get into it. We're going to talk about heart health today. This is a really important topic because heart disease is the leading cause of death in the US and globally. It accounts for almost 33% of all global deaths stems from heart disease. That's a huge number. So really important topic. And what I really want to stress, you see these risk factors listed here, is that 100% of these risk factors for heart disease are modifiable by lifestyle choices. So that gives us a lot of power. We can kind of take our power back when it comes to managing our health, because I hear a lot, people will say, well, I have high cholesterol, but it's genetic, or they kind of have this, powerless feeling that they're doomed by their genetics because their grandparents had it or their dad had it, or, it runs in the family. And there is some truth to that. Genetics do play a role, but it's a very small role compared to how we're living our day-to-day life. So I really want to stress that all of these risk factors can be modified or reversed or prevented, and then you're going to really help your overall risk decreasing for heart disease. So We're going to primarily talk about cholesterol and blood pressure today, a little bit about stress, but really the underlying cause of all disease is inflammation. So you can see this picture here. There's what an unclogged artery looks like. And then when you have buildup of plaque there, which is shown in that bottom picture, you end up getting poor blood flow, and then that can end up leading to heart attack or stroke. And really, inflammation is one of the major drivers for this mechanism to happen. And if we looked at those risk factors, all of those things too are going to lead to increased inflammation, which is where we're going to see some of that risk go up for our overall cardiovascular disease in general. So looking at cholesterol, I wanted to give a little overview about cholesterol because I think it gets a really bad rap in general. Everyone's focusing on trying to lower it, but really our body makes it, and it's crucial for everyone's cells. And we can't have too low cholesterol is really what I'm trying to say too. So we want to have a really healthy balance of good cholesterol. We would not be alive if we didn't have cholesterol. It covers all parts of our brains. Our brain actually uses about 25% of our body's cholesterol that is made. So it's really important for brain health. So people that have too low cholesterol, which is usually from medicine, if you're taking a statin and it drops too low, typically you'll feel brain fog or memory loss, because cholesterol is really protective for the brain and for our ability to focus and be productive and memory and all that. So again, we don't want to go too low in cholesterol. And then also, of course, we're going to talk a lot about how to lower it to make it in that right, perfect range there. But another thing that's not well known, I think, is that cholesterol actually helps us create all of our sex hormones and our adrenal hormones. So cortisol comes from cholesterol. Our pregnenolone, which is called the mother hormone, it kind of helps create all the other hormones, DHEA, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, all of those hormones are actually created from cholesterol. So another reason that it's important to have the right amount of cholesterol in the body. And it's a precursor for vitamin D production as well. So again, some people that are on statins, we want to be mindful of the dosing, work with your doctor. If that cholesterol is getting too low, sometimes that can be a reason where we see, did my screen just change? One sec here. Looks like someone else is sharing. Does that look weird to you?
Yeah, whoever's sharing their screen might want to close that. Somebody just took control.
There. It booted me. Here we go.
Yeah, here we go.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Okay. Good. I was like, oh, what happened? So anyways, yeah, cholesterol is a precursor. It helps us make vitamin D. So that's one of the things, if you are on a statin, I always recommend getting on a vitamin D supplement too. I recommend that in general, even if you're not on a statin, because most people are low. I am going to talk a little bit more about vitamin D, but you can see that cholesterol is really important. It's not the bad guy. We just want to be mindful about where our levels are overall. And digging in a little bit into the types of cholesterol. So the main ones are LDL. Think of LDL, we want it to be lower, L for low. That's the bad cholesterol. And then HDL, think H, we want that one to be higher. H for good, the higher cholesterol that we want good cholesterol. So if you have the combination of high levels of LDL and low levels of HDL, that's going to increase, again, that risk of inflammation that I was talking about. That's where you're going to get more plaque buildup, and your risk for heart disease goes up from the cholesterol perspective there. Now about blood pressure. So blood pressure, just the definition, is the pressure that's exerted by circulating blood on the walls of your blood vessels. So hypertension or high blood pressure, it's a significant risk factor for heart disease and stroke. So ideally you want to be around 120/80 or less, but same thing with cholesterol. We don't want too low blood pressure either. So finding that good balance is really important when it comes to both cholesterol and to blood pressure. So let's move into some of the dietary things, kind of the meat of what we're going to be talking about today. So right off the bat, I want to go over, I get this question so often still, can I eat eggs? Can I eat shrimp? These foods that have high cholesterol in them. if I have high cholesterol or higher heart disease risk? And the answer is yes. Please eat the eggs, eat the shrimp, whatever higher cholesterol foods you like. We are not concerned about cholesterol in food relating to cholesterol in the blood. So that was an original thought process probably 10, 15 years or more ago, but we've now really determined that cholesterol has a very small impact. Cholesterol from dietary sources has a very small impact on our cholesterol in our blood. So I wanted to really highlight that because I still see a lot of confusion around that. What we really care about when it comes to lowering cholesterol are these 4 things right here. So if you have a high saturated fat intake, a high trans fat intake, high added sugar intake, and a low fiber diet. So those 4 things, you are at much higher risk for having cholesterol issues and heart disease risk. So again, not really concerned about cholesterol in foods. And actually, they might have already done it, but there was in the new food labels, they were actually even going to take cholesterol off of the new nutrition facts labels. So it's just not as important as we used to think back a long time ago. So we're going to get into a little bit about each one of these things. The first one is your fats. So when it comes to saturated fat, you don't have to eliminate them by any means. We just want to be mindful of what our total intake is. So saturated fats can directly increase our LDL, that bad cholesterol. So we want to limit to less than 10% of your total calories. And that's going to be about 22 grams of saturated fat on a 2,000 calorie diet. For some people that are at high risk or currently have high cholesterol, I'll usually go a little bit lower, 6-7% of your total calories from saturated fat. So the range there is 6 to 10%. Your main sources, some pictures listed there, are going to be like your really fatty red meats, bacon, sausage, like a fattier ribeye or something will have a higher saturated fat content. Of course, butter, creams or full fat dairy, like whole milk, full fat yogurts, mayo, the skin on chicken. Of course, anything that's fried, you're going to get higher saturated fat. And then a little trick when it comes to oil, if the oil is solid at room temperature, it is a saturated fat. So if you think about palm oil, coconut oil, butter, all of those are going to be solid at room temperature. If you take the bacon fat and you put it in the cup after you're cooking it, it's going to solidify. That tells you it's saturated fat. Bacon's primarily saturated fat. So that's a little trick. Olive oil, avocado oil, those will never be solid at room temperature. They'll always be liquid. And that's the trick that that's unsaturated. So we want to decrease our saturated fat intake, and we're going to get to what to increase in a second. But along with that does go trans fat as well. There's really no safe limit of trans fat. There's not even a recommended amount because lots of research has shown that it is directly related to heart disease. You get a 50% higher risk of heart disease if you have a diet high in trans fat. And we see that they're just really inflammatory fats. And up until 2023, there was a lot more trans fats in the diet. The FDA finally came in and banned them, which is a great thing that they did. So partially hydrogenated oils, that's another word for trans fats. Those have been banned. They're illegal in US. You cannot find them in foods anymore, which is great. However, there are still naturally occurring trans fats in certain foods. In meat, there's some. What happens is in like the stomach of a cow, it actually creates trans fat. So there's a little bit in meat. And then when you fry foods, that's probably going to be one of the number one most common sources for trans fat. So in general, we should be limiting our fried options, like traditionally fried. If you have an air fryer, that's great. Use that instead, or bake things or grill things. That's going to over time be a lot less taxing on the body, a lot less inflammatory. So we really want to try to limit trans fats as best as we can. And then saturated fats, just try to get less than 10% of your total calories of the day from saturated fats. So what do we want to focus on here is unsaturated fats. So there's a few types of unsaturated fats, and omega-3 fatty acids are one type. and just mono unsaturated fats. So different types, all of them considered unsaturated. And these do the opposite. They lower inflammation. They have been shown to decrease our LDL cholesterol, and they're going to improve your blood vessel elasticity. I highly recommend that you eat a fatty fish 2 to 4 times a week. And if you are not a fish eater, if you're vegan or vegetarian, or maybe you just don't like fish, I do recommend taking a supplement that has EPA and DHA in it, because our plant-based foods have very low levels of EPA, DHA. So I do recommend a supplement if you're not a fish eater. And if you are, make sure your intake is at least 2 to 4 times per week. One of my favorite ways, I posted a picture here to get my omega-3s. I love smoked salmon. I probably eat that for breakfast 4 times a week, and I make an avocado toast that looks exactly like this picture here. Really easy, really quick. One thing that I hear recurring is some people don't like to cook fish. So there's other ways that you can get these omega-3s without having to actually cook a fish in your house. Some people don't like the smell or whatever. So think about your smoked options, or I've put a couple pictures of some of my favorite brands of canned options. So those are really easy to add on to a sandwich or a salad, bump up your omega-3s. And then the other unsaturated oils, your olive oil, avocado oil, avocados, nuts, seeds, all of those are unsaturated. We want to start including more of those versus the saturated and trans fat ones. Okay, let's talk about added sugar next. So this one I think sometimes surprises people, because they mostly think of sugar is really only related to like diabetes or pre-diabetes, but there is a lot of research that has shown that sugar significantly increases blood pressure, your bad cholesterol. It's very inflammatory if we're doing too much, and your overall risk for cardiovascular disease goes way up if we're overeating sugar. So for women, we want to limit this to 6 teaspoons per day. And for men, we want to limit to 9 teaspoons per day. That equals 24 to 36 grams. And a little tidbit here, 1 teaspoon of sugar has 4 grams of sugar in it. So it's really easy. Like if you're someone that is adding sugar to coffee or tea, it's pretty easy to go over this recommended maximum. So I highly recommend that you take stock and start to look at where your added sugars are coming from. And I created this spreadsheet that I'm happy to share with Gina to send out. It'll calculate things for you. You do have to do a little bit of work, because you have to go in and put in your foods that you're eating. This is a really good just experiment to do with yourself, because you might not have any awareness of where your added sugars are coming from or how much added sugar you're actually intaking. So go and see, what's my coffee that I'm having. I'm just using this as an example, but I did want to show you how easy it is to accidentally get way too much added sugar. And then we're going to see inflammation rise, heart disease, obesity, that's linked to so many different issues in the body. So on this example here, this person, there's 5 different foods put in here, and they're already at 81 grams of added sugar, which is 57 grams more than the recommendation for women and 45 grams more than the recommendation for men. And this is only, like half a day here. So highly recommend that you look at where the most is coming from in your day. So I put some examples here of things to trade out. So if you switched your grande vanilla latte from Starbucks out, which contains 35 grams of sugar, and instead we did a plain latte, add a drizzle of honey, about a teaspoon, you're going to get about 5 grams of added sugar there. If you switch your ketchup out, condiments in general can be a really sneaky space for added sugar. So switching out the ketchup, so this person had 3 tablespoons of ketchup, that was 12 grams of added sugar. Again, that's 50% of the total amount for a day for a woman. So I recommend checking condiments too. If you switch that out to an unsweetened ketchup, there's a lot of them out there now. I really like Primal Kitchen brand as a good one, for example. And then you switched out your sugary drink. So this person had a kombucha. There was 16 grams of sugar per bottle. If you're kind of a good rule of thumb that I have for if you're buying drinks, is try to aim for 5 grams of sugar or less. If you're doing kombuchas or teas, or, you know, when you look at the label, 5 grams of or less is a good goal. And they definitely have kombuchas that reach that goal. And I'm talking about also added sugar. So added sugar will be shown on the nutrition facts label. There'll be 2 sugar categories. One will say total and one will say added. What we care about is added. So check that out. And I have made, well, going back to this, I mean, you can see you save about 50 grams of added sugar just changing those 3 things in a day. So I highly recommend you log, even if just for a couple of days, just to added sugar is. You're welcome to use this spreadsheet again. And let's just see how much you're actually intaking, and then you can bring awareness and make some changes. Now, I see some questions in there about which sugars are best. So I created this quick sugar guide to give you some guidance on which sugars are going to be best. Now, we really want to limit high fructose corn syrup. In my opinion, should be banned. It's very inflammatory and definitely increases risk of disease if we're doing too much high fructose corn syrup. Artificial sweeteners. So anything that's 0 calories, or even the 0 sugar sweeteners at Starbucks or diet sodas, those are going to contain typically an artificial sweetener in this list. Sucralose and acesulfame potassium, those are probably the top 2 that I still see a lot in products. Protein powders, protein bars, any diet sweeteners. We really want to avoid these. Again, I can do a whole talk on just sugars in general, but these are very inflammatory, and we do have enough research now to show that these should be really limited or avoided. And same with sugar alcohols. I recently moved sugar alcohols to the not great category because in 2023, there were studies that were coming out that if you had a long-term intake of them, you increase your risk of cardiovascular issues and blood clots. So now I'm just erring on the side of caution with those, and we want to limit. It's like erythritol, xylitol, those ones. Now, if you are wanting a 0 calorie sweetener, I would go for stevia or monk fruit. There's actually better research on these, and in some research, it even shows stevia does better for blood pressure and is better for blood sugar management of the sugars. Monk fruit still, I guess, needs a little more research, but it's very similar to stevia as far as the breakdown in the body. So I would recommend for the 0 calorie sweeteners, go for these 2. And then all the rest of the sweeteners there, you just want to be mindful again of the amount that you're having. Now, I put honey, maple syrup, date syrup in the a little bit better, but they're still sugar. We still need to be mindful. And that's because they're the only types of sugars that are the least processed, the most natural, and actually have some benefits. So for example, honey can be really good for allergies, and there's actually some minerals and vitamin content in honey and maple syrup. So I put those in more of the green area just because they're a lot less inflammatory on the body compared to the others over here. But use this guide. Again, I'm going to send out the slides so you'll have this. But just take stock of what your normal sugar intake. Someone said honey with coffee is really good. That's what I put in my coffee. It's delicious. So there's a lot of different ways we can retrain the brain to start to, you know, like different sweetness levels. One thing to think about these artificial sweeteners is they're a lot sweeter than regular sugar. So what it does is it changes our palate, and it makes things like fruit that are naturally sweetened taste less pleasurable. So something to be mind of, sometimes there's some addictive component with it, and we just have to slowly titrate down before we'll feel like honey, for example, will taste good to us. But highly recommend fruit. A lot of people are afraid to eat fruit. I'm not sure why, because of the sugar or because of, you know, whatever reasons that have come up just in the promotions of it. And so I am a big fan of fruit. It's packed with fiber, and I will tell you, there is not one disease process that is related to eating too much fruit. So we are good with fruit. Have 2 to 3 servings a day, especially if you're trying to decrease your added sugar intake. I recommend start eating more fruit throughout the day so you'll still get that sweetness. So enjoy the fruit. Lots of studies on it that show positive effects of decreasing cardiovascular disease risk. So I'm a big fan of it, and I recommend everyone enjoy a few servings of fruit per day. Okay, so fiber is the next topic here. One of the most powerful nutrients for disease prevention and reversal is fiber. So we cannot be healthy if we are not eating enough fiber, whether it's gut health, heart health, brain health. There's so many different links to having good fiber in the diet and improved health outcomes. So specifically for cholesterol and blood pressure, fiber is it's like a Pac-Man, how I think of it. If you remember Pac-Man, it helps bind to LDL cholesterol in the gut and helps our body get rid of it. Think of fiber as like a master detoxer because it also helps bind inflammation. It binds toxins and things that shouldn't be there, and it helps our body get rid of it. So it's really helpful for just a defense mechanism in the body. So higher fiber intake, of course, is also going to lower our blood pressure, aside from the lowering of cholesterol. There's a lot of good studies on that. And it improves our gut health. And actually, if we have a healthier gut, we're more likely to have a healthier heart. So big relationship there. You want to get a mix of both soluble and insoluble. Most foods have a little mix of both. As far as soluble, beans, lentils, chickpeas, the oats, psyllium husk, those are the highest soluble fiber foods. Highly recommend including servings of those in daily. For men, we want 38 grams. For women, we want 25 grams per day. And I've given a couple examples of things to think about replacing basically your white foods. We want to get a whole grain or a legume or, millet is good. Oatmeal is good. So something that is going to give you a lot more bang for your buck as far as fiber goes in there. So highly recommend, take a look at your fiber intake. Most people are only getting 10 to 12 grams a day. It's one of the most common deficiencies I see in people. So be a little more mindful. Try to get 7 to 10 grams of fiber per meal if you can. That would be a great goal. Start reading labels. There's a lot of resources online. I have a really good fiber resource too that I can link to that just breaks down how much fiber is in a bunch of different foods. So just be mindful. Again, if you're eating whole foods, you're more likely to have a higher fiber diet. If you're getting your fruits and your veggies, your plants, your legumes, then your fiber intake will automatically go up there. Now, one thing that gets its own separate slide here is vitamin D. Again, one, I kind of mentioned, if you are on a statin, it can stop the production of vitamin D. So make sure you are on vitamin D for that reason. But aside from that, even if you're not on a medication that stops that production, I highly recommend across the board, people are, one, checking their vitamin D levels. Not every doctor checks it. You have to request it. And two, I would be on 5,000 IUs per day, or you can do the 50,000 IUs once a week. Extremely safe, very effective. There's not a disease process that is not correlated with low vitamin D that I've found, but particularly for heart disease, we see when they've done studies and they've done correlations, they've shown that people that have heart attacks also had low vitamin D. Not saying it's a cause, but just they look for trends and correlations of things. And that's one thing that has come up a lot. Really easy thing to move up if you get on a supplement. There's not a lot of vitamin D in food. The best source is the sun. I always recommend getting some sunshine too, but we see improvements in blood pressure and cholesterol. We see lower inflammation, and then it also lowers our oxidative stress in the vascular system, which is higher levels of oxidative stress are very much correlated with heart disease. So lots of good things to say about vitamin D, and I put a couple supplement options there, and get some sunshine. So moving on to blood pressure. Again, all this is kind of correlated, as you'll see, they all relate, but blood pressure specifically is we need these 3 nutrients in check. So sodium, potassium, and magnesium. And lots of, research has shown if you have a high sodium diet and you have low potassium and low magnesium, your risk for high blood pressure and heart attack goes way up. So I wanted to make it really easy and provide specific servings and some foods for you to start eating more of when it comes to potassium and magnesium. And then we want to be mindful, of course, of our sodium intake. 2,300 milligrams is recommended for sodium for people that do not have high blood pressure or heart disease risk. But 1,500 milligrams is for people that do have high blood pressure, that at-risk population. And to give a little context, 1 teaspoon of salt has 2,300 milligrams of sodium. So you can see how it's very easy to go overboard. I have done diet recalls with clients where they're not even knowingly, but accidentally eating 12,000 milligrams of sodium per day. It's really easy to do if you dine out. About 70% of our sodium intake comes from restaurants, fast food, from dining out. So I would look at how often you're doing that and start to decrease. I always recommend limiting, fast food to once or twice a week max, because it can kind of get away from us. Sometimes we're, end up going 4 or 5. If you were to take stock of how often you dine out versus cook, sometimes it gets away from us. So bring some awareness to that. Again, that'll really help lower sodium intake if we can cook more at home or choosing healthier fast options. But try to aim for getting higher magnesium and potassium as well, just through your foods. Of course, supplementing is good too, but we really want to put food first when it comes to these nutrients. The only supplement that it's hard to get from food that I mentioned is vitamin D, but every other nutrient, we really want to focus on getting our good nutrients through food and then just supplement if we need to or as needed. So I'll again send this out so you can see these food lists here. Another one that's not as talked about that really helps with blood pressure is nitric oxide. And if you are in the camp that likes beets and are eating beets, then you are getting lots of nitric oxide. I love beets. I love beet juice. Also good for the athletes out there or the people that are working out. Drink some beet juice or take a nitric oxide supplement before. It actually helps your cardiovascular output and gets more oxygen to your blood so you can work out a little bit more effectively. So nitric oxide, those very well studied specifically for lowering blood pressure because it helps relax the vessels. Again, it brings oxygen into the cells. So beets are the number one source, but it's also in leafy greens. Our body does make nitric oxide from a couple amino acids, but these are going to have the highest concentrated source of it. And then also, this is a good supplement that I like if you wanted to do a supplement of nitric oxide, which some people like to do that. I have a lot of people who I see in my practice who are trying to avoid medication and so want to do the lifestyle stuff first. So there are some supplements that can be helpful just to test to see if that'll help lower the blood pressure, or some people that just don't feel good on certain medications. Of course, always work with your practitioner about supplements, medications, what would work for you. But this one's very safe, can be very effective. Again, nitric oxide is one that's not as talked about. I know everyone's heard about sodium and lowering that and magnesium, potassium, but for the beet people out there, I would start eating more of those. I know not everybody likes beets, but specifically for lowering sodium though, again, look at how much you're dining out, start to read the food labels. Aim for less than about 600 milligrams of sodium per meal, and then less than about 140 milligrams for a snack. That's a good general goal. So read the labels. It'll say sodium on there. Always pay attention to the serving size of the food. So if you were to eat 3 cups of this particular food here on the left, you'd get double this sodium. So almost 900 milligrams there. So make sure you pay attention to how much you're eating. I think sometimes that's forgotten. And then, of course, just eating more fresh, unprocessed, whole foods, focusing on those nutrients that we just discussed, limiting your fast and processed foods. I, again, recommend limiting drive-throughs, fast food, 1 or 2 meals max per week, or even less if you can. That will make a dramatic change in your overall heart health risk. And just try some spices, garlic, sodium, just like sugar, can be really addictive on the brain. And so sometimes when we don't add as much salt, we're like, this doesn't taste that good. You do have to retrain the brain and start to get used to less sodium intake. So just know that it's a little bit of a process, but eventually your body will get used to that. And then let's say you have a really salty dish, you'll be like, oh, or even just a minimally salted dish, like, wow, this tastes way too salty for me. I hear the same about sugar too. So again, we can retrain the brain and the palate to like things and have them taste good. Because I know that's a big barrier. People are like, well, my food's not going to taste as good if I don't add the sodium. But try some of these low sodium seasonings. Very good. I've tried all of these. And just look at how you can season your food without high sodium intake. And all of that will be really helpful for keeping your heart and your blood pressure nice and healthy. So let's go over the top 2 best diets for heart health. Number 1, I'm sure you've all heard of it, Mediterranean diet. US News ranks diets every single year based off of a lot of different things like nutritional completeness, health benefits, risks. Is it proven? Is it sustainable? And the Mediterranean diet, year after year, always gets ranked number 1 diet for multiple different health issues. But heart disease, heart health is one of the top. So highly recommend this type of diet, and it actually is naturally full of all of these nutrients that I just mentioned. It's high in potassium, it has high in magnesium, it's low sodium, it focuses on your fruits and your vegetables and your legumes and your fiber. Its main source of protein is from fish, so fatty fish, salmon, tuna, mackerel, herring, those are all good fatty fish sources. And it also focuses on your physical activity. It's more of a lifestyle component, but studies have shown it can reduce your risk of heart attack or stroke by 30% if you are eating more like the Mediterranean people do. So very effective at slowing plaque buildup. It probably is my most recommended eating plan, not just for heart health, but for weight loss. I think one thing is it's very sustainable to be on because it tastes really good. So a lot of people, it can be hard to stick to diets if you feel like it's bland or it's not very accessible. And the Mediterranean diet is, I think, delicious. And if you're focusing on these foods listed here, it's a lot of olive oil and olives and all of your unsaturated fats. Again, it's a compilation of everything that I've just gone through. So this would be one of the best diets. And the other really good diet is the DASH diet. You may or may not be familiar with this. It's a diet developed specifically for hypertension. So it's very similar to the Mediterranean diet. Little bit different because it focuses on sodium, but it's also always ranked as one of the best diets. It was number 2 this year. Mediterranean was number 1. I think they're pretty much neck and neck. It's just if you have high blood pressure, probably do the DASH diet. So again, lots of studies, lots of research on it, improves blood pressure, improves cholesterol, reduces your heart disease risk. And it has very similar things as the Mediterranean, like I mentioned. You're going to limit your really fatty meats. You're going to limit your full fat dairy and your sugar. And you're going to focus on your veggies, your fruits. You're going to do low fat dairy options if you're doing dairy. Focus on fish and lean meats, fish and poultry. Lots of beans and legumes, nuts and seeds. So again, a lot of similarities there, but a little more mindful of the sodium on this one. So top 2 diets I'd recommend for heart health and even beyond heart health are those 2 there. There's a lot of resources too online. There's meal plans and there's different shopping lists. So it is really easy to find information on these as well. So that makes it a little more accessible in general. Okay, we talked a lot about food, but we have to talk about stress, and we're going to talk about movement here too. Lastly, then I'm going to go over some specific supplements because I always get questions on that. But stress here. If we have increased cortisol, and I'm talking about more like long-term chronic stress, I'm not talking about the one-off times we get stressed. If you're just a naturally stressed person, or you always feel like life is chaotic and stressful, you're increasing your inflammation. Stress is one of the major causes of inflammation and heart attacks. So that goes up, our blood pressure and cholesterol go up, your risk of cardiovascular disease goes up. So I can never talk enough about stress management. I can't even have a presentation without talking about stress because it is so impactful on our overall health. And it also will affect our eating habits too. So it's a really good thing to wrangle that cortisol in and focus on becoming more resilient to stressors, which we can do. We can't really get rid of stressors necessarily all the time, but we can become more resilient to them. We can improve how our body reacts to them. So big fan of deep breathing. I like that box breathing there in the bottom left. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, repeat 4 times. It just takes a minute, so less than a minute. Really effective at instantly lowering cortisol and instantly lowering blood pressure. So if you're someone that's has blood pressure issues right now, I would log in like 3 to 4 times a day where you're doing a deep breathing exercise, even if it's only for 2 minutes or less. That can be a little thing that makes a big difference. Of course, I always recommend daily movement, even if it's walking. I'm going to talk more about that in a second. And then meditation, if you're into it, if you like it, do 5 minutes, do 10 minutes. My favorite meditation app is Insight Timer. Has a lot of great meditations for a lot of different phases. Like if you are high stress, there's a whole high stress section. If you need more energy, there's an energy meditation. You can really type in anything, any emotion that you're feeling or anything that you're needing. And there's a ton of different meditations on there. And like I said, even 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes can make a big difference, but we want to do them daily. So that's what really matters, are these things that we're doing daily and majority of the time. Our body will be reflective of what we do most of the time. So if you're going in through a drive-through every once in a while, that's okay. But if most of the time you're cooking at home and you're doing your deep breathing and you're getting movement, that's where you'll start to see your health improve. So make those little tweaks to see, what is more imbalanced and what you want to focus on. And one thing too, I always mention to clients when I'm seeing them is I would just pick 1 or 2 things at a time. So don't feel like you have to go and implement every single thing that I've talked about in this presentation so far. I would just pick what is the one that stands out to you the most, what is going to be most impactful for you. Is it the sugar? Is it the sodium? Do we need to focus on healthier fats? So which one do you feel like is glaring at you the most? Start there, and then you can slowly work through adding on something else once you feel like you've gotten 1 or 2 things down at a time. That'll actually create more success as well with that. And then movement, there are specific recommendations for that. Of course, we know movement is medicine, and it's one of the best things we can do to improve our heart health, lower our blood pressure over time, lowers cholesterol. It's linked to increasing our good cholesterol. Recommendations are either 150 minutes per week, so that's 30 minutes, 5 days a week. And I tell people you can break that up. You can do 10-minute walk in the morning and a 20-minute movement, strength training, something in the afternoon. You can break it up. The body doesn't care. Just get some movement in, get your heart rate up a little bit. That's, do something that's going to be, where you're able to stick with it. Strength training, we want to get 2 days per week at least of training all the major muscle groups on there. So figure out in your schedule where you can build these things in. I think that's so helpful to look ahead of time and build some of these practices in, and just hold yourself accountable and stick with it. Get a buddy, get a group of people, pick some people that are in the seminar to hold you accountable. I think that really helps if you have other people that are doing it with you. But even if you can only walk right now, just walk. That works. And there's a lot of good benefits of just walking. So focus on that. Now I'm going to go through some of the evidence-based research on specific supplements for heart health. I'll go through quickly and then we'll get to questions. So red yeast rice, this is basically a natural statin. So if you don't feel good on a statin, some people have negative symptoms from statins, you probably won't feel good on red yeast rice. But I've listed the evidence-based dosing there, and there's a couple good brands. It can work for lowering your cholesterol and your triglycerides. It still will decrease CoQ10. CoQ10 is a really important antioxidant for heart health. And ironically, statins decrease CoQ10. So anyone who's on a statin, I would recommend a CoQ10 as well. But this will do the same thing. It still will lower our CoQ10 amount. So you still would need to supplement that. But 2 to 3 months of this have shown that it can be helpful for lowering cholesterol in the studies. So that is one option. I always, again, lifestyle stuff is going to be way more important. But if you wanted to add one of these supplements, that is okay. Niacin, the biggest complaint I hear about niacin is it causes flushing. If you've ever taken it, redness, kind of that flushed feeling. But you can buy flush-free niacin. So niacin is just a B vitamin. And if in the higher doses, so about 1,200 to 3,000 milligrams, have shown to lower triglycerides, increase HDL, and lower LDL. So it can be an option, but again, depending on which brand you get, you might have a little more side effects with the flushing. Next one, plant sterols and plant stanols. These are naturally occurring in our fruits and veggies. So that just shows you eat more fruits and veggies, you'll decrease your bad cholesterol, increase your good cholesterol. But they've just extracted them and, of course, put them in a supplement for you. Lots of strong evidence on these. What they do is they actually grab on, similar to fiber, they grab onto the cholesterol in the gut. So that's how it helps decrease it. 2,000, 3,000 milligrams per day. Those are a good option. This next one's probably my favorite one if I was going to recommend a supplement. This is the one I recommend the most is bergamot because I have yet to have anybody have any side effects from it. Does anyone know what a bergamot is? It is a fruit, and it's basically if you were to make a lime and an orange, you get a bergamot. Very well studied. There's studies in the International Journal of Cardiology where they put people on bergamot and then they compared it to people on a statin, and bergamot lowered cholesterol, lowered the LDL, lowered triglycerides, total cholesterol, and raised HDL at a very similar rate as a statin does. And you can also use this one with a statin. So chat with your doc, very safe. There's no side effects that are reported from it. Of course, everybody's a little bit different, but 1,000 milligrams daily is the studied amount. Again, very well tolerated. And it works. I will say I've experimented with this one with my dad. And if you buy a low quality bergamot, it won't work as well. This is the #1 brand I recommend. It's pharmaceutical grade, high quality. I had my dad on it, lowered cholesterol, and then he bought a cheap brand off Amazon and it did not work. So it just goes to show it is important that if you are doing these supplements that you have the right dose to make a difference and that you have a high reputable brand that you're using. The supplement industry is not regulated, so I always like to get supplement brands that are third-party tested that show exactly, what's in them is in them. That's so important for any supplement. But little fact on that bergamot there, it definitely works, but the brand is important, and that's going to be true for the other ones as well. So we got about 15 minutes left. Little wrap up here. Again, mindful of your fats and added sugar. Mediterranean or DASH diet, one of the top 2 diets for heart health. Consider looking into those. Focus on your fiber, your potassium, magnesium, vitamin D, nitric oxide, omega-3s. Those are the major game changers when it comes to heart health. So emphasis on those nutrients. Get your stress management techniques in daily, movement in daily, even if it's just walking. And then work with your practitioner if you want to look into supplements. Always check what medications you're on. Always talk to your practitioner, dietitian. They can definitely help with all of that. All of the supplements I mentioned here are safe and effective, but it's always good to look at your big picture for you as an individual to really decide what is best in general. So that wraps it up. We got 12 minutes left or so. So let's get into some questions.
Oh my gosh, Natalie, we have over 30 questions.
I saw the chat just going up. I was trying not to get distracted by it. So we'll get as many as we can, and I can even stay a little bit after if we need.
Okay, let's do a rapid fire answer on these if we can.
I will, yes, I'll
just to help as many people as possible. So first 2 are about blood pressure, and the others came from cholesterol, but some of them do apply to blood pressure. Is there anything to do to lower your high diastolic readings, like she said 80 or 90, when systolic readings are normal? So they have normal systolics, but their diastolic readings are too high. Is there anything?
It'll be all the same things that I mentioned. So the diastolic reading is when the blood vessel or the heart's relaxed, and it's the pressure on that heart when it's relaxed. So for whatever reason that's higher. It's going to be across the board the same recommendations, though. There's not a separate recommendation for systolic versus diastolic. I would just get your fiber, lower your sodium, get your potassium, magnesium. So focus on, everything we talked about today.
If the pressure is 110/70, does it mean a low risk of heart disease?
That means that your blood pressure is normal. So you would not have that specific risk factor for heart disease.
All right. How low is too low for cholesterol?
Man, I've seen people on medications where their cholesterol is like in the 90s and they don't feel good. And your cholesterol will never go that low. That's all medication induced. So that's where you got to talk to your doctor and say, hey, we got to adjust this dose, because you do not want too low cholesterol, and your body will tell you that because you won't feel good.
Okay, how is it that we can have high cholesterol, but the heart CT scan reports that there is no plaque? This is my situation too.
Well, remember, over time, there's a lot of contributors to plaque, and cholesterol is one of them. So what might be happening is, if we look at the big picture, is maybe your overall inflammation is low. Maybe you have a really good HDL. So I've had people that have high LDL, but their HDL is so high that it's offsetting negative effects of the LDL.
Yep.
And so when you look at anytime you do a lipid panel, which will show your cholesterol, look at your risk factor. It'll be there. You want it to be under, I think the range is like under 3.55.
Yeah.
So a lot of people come to me and they're like, my LDL is so high, but their risk is so low because they have really good HDL. So that could be one reason that it's protecting your body from building up that plaque. Also, you have to look about everything. Is inflammation is low? What's the added sugar intake? There's other markers. I didn't add them into this because it get a little complicated, but I always like people to check their CRP, C-reactive protein. It's an inflammatory marker. And if that's low, then you have a much lower risk of heart disease and plaque buildup too, even with high cholesterol. CRP's one I love, and then homocysteine's another one. So there's other inflammatory markers. If we were to look at your big picture, you might have really low inflammatory markers, even though the cholesterol is high, and that's protecting you from getting that plaque buildup.
Does high cholesterol affect the vitamin D levels?
No, not directly, but low vitamin D will increase your cholesterol.
Okay. I used to hear a lot of praise for coconut oil, but it solidifies at warmer temperatures. Is it not so good then?
It's a saturated fat, so you just have to put it in the saturated fat category and limit how much you're taking.
Coconut and palm oil. Okay. How do you reduce your LDL? Any recommended red meat intake per week? Is LDL associated with low smoking level oils? How to reduce LDL? Is there any recommended red meat intake per week? Yeah.
Okay, I'll cover the red meat one. My stance on red meat is get good, organic, hormone-free, antibiotic-free, grass-fed. What we're concerned about is processed meat when it comes to heart health. So if you want to eat a good, high-quality steak, eat one. I'm way more concerned about, and you could do a lean option if you're concerned about your saturated fat, but I am way more concerned about the processed meat intake. That's increasing inflammation dramatically. So I grew up Wyoming, Colorado, having buffalo and beef and good cuts of it. And that makes a big difference in our overall health. Usually 2 times a week if you want to have a red meat hamburger or steak, but I would look at the quality of it. That's probably the most important thing, as opposed to just eliminating red meat because of heart issues.
Okay. Somebody was asking for a list of some inflammatory foods, I guess, to avoid.
That's going to be anything with a lot of added sugar or a lot of your processed foods. If you're eating whole foods, your fruits, your veggies, you're going to have an inflammatory diet naturally. I always recommend avoiding, again, artificial sweeteners. You can look back at that sugar guide that I had. Things that are overly fried or processed, those are automatically going to increase inflammation pretty much for everybody. And then if you have a food intolerance to something and you're eating it, that could increase your inflammation too. Sometimes dairy is inflammatory for people. Sometimes gluten is inflammatory for people. Not everyone, but it is important to look at, how does food make you feel personally when you eat it in general, certain foods. You're going to feel a lot better if you're eating, whole foods.
Does grilling meat decrease the saturated fat?
No.
Okay.
But if you get that black char on it, that's highly carcinogenic. So I don't recommend the char.
Yeah. Is there anything other than statins that a vegan can do to lower their LDLs if they are high and out of normal range?
Bergamot.
Some of these you may. Okay. Yeah. Some of these you've already answered. What are fatty fishes besides salmon?
Tuna, mackerel, sardines, herring. Those are all good ones.
Okay. Is brown sugar better than white?
No, not from a, 1 teaspoon, still 4 grams of sugar. It's pretty similar. No.
Okay. Is Dave's Killer Bread good?
Yes.
Okay. Does the sugar in fruits count within the sugar limit you were talking about
Nope.
earlier?
We don't count
Great.
sugar in fruit. Go eat a lot of fruit. I
Okay.
only care about added sugar. That's what we
Okay.
care about.
What are some other, okay, what about Coke Zero? Somebody asked.
Artificial sweetener, not a fan. Limit.
Don't you still have to limit fruit if you have diabetes?
Nope.
Asking for a friend. Okay. Nope.
I don't take
Okay.
fruit away from anybody, including diabetics or pre-diabetics. I include fruit in their diet in a just balanced way where we're still managing carbs.
Okay. Is sourdough bread like sourdough bread versus white bread, are they the same, better, one better than the other?
Sourdough's a little bit, I would say healthier. It's still the same amount of carbs and things, but it's got some fermentation in it. It's a lot lower in gluten. So some people that are gluten intolerant, I'm not talking about celiacs, but sourdough has the lowest amount of gluten of any bread that's not gluten-free bread. So some people can break it down a little bit better. If I'm eating white bread, I'm going to eat sourdough. So yeah.
Okay. Does it matter when during the day you eat fiber, i.e., can I get most of it at breakfast, even if I'm eating fattier foods for dinner?
Does not matter when, just try to get your 25 grams per day. And if you eat too much fiber in a meal, you might feel digestive issues though. So you don't want to overdo it. I think 10 grams per meal is a good amount. And go low and slow when you add fiber, because if you do too much too fast, you will have bloats and pain. And I don't want that to deter you from continuing to eat it. That just means you need to lower the dose you have in one setting.
Okay, great. Thoughts on Yakult for help with digestion? Yakult. I'm not familiar
Yeah,
with
I think that's just a probiotic yogurt. And if you can handle dairy, that's totally fine.
Okay. What is better, vitamin D or D3?
They're the same. The only one you can get over the counter is D3.
Okay. All right. Thoughts on supplementing L-methylfolate?
That's just the methylated version of folate. That's the only version of folate that I would recommend supplementing if you are doing folate. I don't recommend folic acid. I recommend methylfolate, and that's a whole other conversation. But yeah.
Okay. What are your thoughts on soy and hormone issues?
They can influence hormones or soy can influence hormones. It can be estrogenic. My thoughts on soy is go for organic, non-GMO, because I think soy is one of the most genetically modified inorganic foods that we have in the US. And we see populations like in Japan, they have a ton of soy, but their cancer risk is way lower than ours. And so just focus on organic. Yes, someone asked, has the debate between organic versus non-organic foods been settled? Absolutely, we need to be eating mostly organic if we want to avoid pesticides and genetic modification, which can absolutely disrupt our hormones and increase inflammation. So you don't have to do it for everything. I highly recommend going to ewg.org, look at their Clean 15 and their Dirty Dozen, and you can base what you buy organic off of those.
Right. I think you addressed this already, but how to read sugar label: total plus added equals total sugar intake?
Yep. So if you're looking at the label, you'll see total. That's the total amount in there. So say you have 10 grams of total sugar, 5 grams of added. That means 5 grams of that product are naturally occurring. There must be a fruit in it or maybe some dairy that has naturally occurring, but then 5 grams are added. We only care about the added.
All right. Mediterranean diet, is that better if you have inflammation issues?
One of the best anti-inflammatory diets. I highly recommend for lowering inflammation.
Is Tapico a healthier alternative to wheat flour?
If you can't break wheat down, then yes.
What is that?
Tapioca flour, I think, is what. Just a different
tapioca flour. Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. If you have an event that causes your blood pressure to go up, how long should you allow for it to come down before you seek medical help?
I think that's a question for a doctor. Because I don't know the answer to that as far as how long you wait. If you don't feel good and you are really worried about it, I would go seek help. if you feel dizzy or faint or
Yeah.
you just don't feel good, I don't know if there's a time limit necessarily on it, but if in those moments, if you have high stress or high blood pressure, do a deep breathing exercise, like do some things to actually calm your system. And again, we know that deep breathing immediately lowers cortisol and blood pressure. So just focus on becoming calm to help negate that, worsening effect.
And do know that the blood pressure stations that we have set up at work have a chart, and it shows, what your hypertensive crisis would be. It gives you all the different levels, stage 1, stage 2, hypertensive crisis. And if you are in the hypertensive crisis, it tells you to seek medical care immediately. Okay, what are the reasons why heart rate may be higher, like over 100, even with a normal blood pressure? And how do we lower a constantly high heart rate?
Dehydration is one of the main causes of high heart rate outside of stress or just, inactivity. So many people are walking around dehydrated. So make sure, I recommend you get 80 ounces a day minimum. Have your water bottle on your desk in front of you. Have it with you, because sometimes we just forget to drink it, out of sight, out of mind. And your heart rate will go up if you're dehydrated.
Okay. And what is Pilates on a reformer considered? Is it considered strength training?
Yes, I love Pilates on a reformer.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, every statin has made me hurt bad, like I have the flu. Does this red yeast make you achy?
Yeah, if you don't do well on a statin, I would not do red yeast rice. I would do one of the other 3 options. Bergamot would, again, be my top choice. You could try. No side effects. It's just a plant. So I would do that.
Okay.
That's a really common thing with statins. Some people just don't feel good on them. So there are other options that are very helpful, though. So you have those.
Okay. What if you don't eat processed foods? Less oil, just 1 spoon of sugar, white food only 1 to 2 times per week, but still have an elevated LDL of 145 and cholesterol 210. What do you do to reduce them?
Make sure you have 25 grams of fiber if you're a female, 38 if you're a male. One of the number 1 ways to lower your LDL. Also look at your HDL level, like I mentioned, and what your overall risk is. Because some people might just have a little bit higher LDL and total cholesterol, but they have really low risk for heart disease because their HDL is high, their triglycerides are normal, maybe blood sugar is normal. So I would look at the bigger picture of it. Get fiber, get your movement in, and look at how many added sugars you're intaking, even accidentally.
All right. Have read that holy basil or palm juice can assist with lowering cholesterol. Is that true?
Not sure for holy
Okay.
basil. I think about that for other things, but I don't know about cholesterol.
Does this supplement, and I don't know what where we were in the discussion when they put this in there, does this supplement actually reduce LDL after certain times, or do they have to be taken continuously till the last breath? Oh, okay. What brand do you recommend of bergamot? I think you mentioned that in there, but the question is, do you stay on it forever?
No, because they can lower your cholesterol. So again, we don't want to go too low. I usually have people on bergamot for 3 to 6 months max. And same with the other ones. The plant stanols and sterols is basically like eating a vegetable. You could probably stay on that longer term and fine, but no, pretty much the supplements, you get off of them after your cholesterol's balanced, and they should only be used in conjunction with the other lifestyle stuff that we talked about.
Somebody put a comment in here that I don't know if it's true, but I want to check with you. Bergamot is in Earl Grey tea.
You can sip bergamot tea. I'm not familiar with Earl Grey. Is that a type of tea or brand? I don't know, but I've seen it. I've seen bergamot. You can get tea and sip it, bergamot tea, if you wanted. I don't know the dose of bergamot in it or if it would be effective, but it probably won't hurt cholesterol.
Okay. Who should take Cosequin 10 regularly? Is there any risk if taken more than the body needs? For people with blood pressure 90/60, is there any food that should be avoided?
What was the beginning of that question? Risk of what?
Who should take CoQ10?
Anyone on a statin.
Okay. Is there any risk if they take more than the body needs?
No,
for people with
why you would do
pressure.
that. You could just get a standard supplement. Even if you don't have a statin, you could still, CoQ10 is still very safe to
Okay. Is there any food that should be avoided if they have like a low blood pressure of 90/60?
For my low blood pressure people, eat more salt. You guys gonna do the opposite. There's no food that should be avoided, no. But
Okay.
you guys have higher sodium needs. So
All right.
you're
Can you
lucky.
share thoughts on matcha?
Matcha's great. I'm fine with it. And I'm typing in the brand of the supplement because I keep seeing that. But yeah, matcha's totally fine. Lots of antioxidants in it. So
Good.
sure.
Is a Mediterranean diet recommended / good for diabetes too?
100% yes. Love it for people with blood
Can you
sugar.
share thoughts on MCT oils? What MCT is?
So MCT
Mono-
oils, they are, think of them as a fat that burns like a carbohydrate. They are medium chain triglycerides. They're going to be liquid at room temperature, so they're unsaturated. What they've done is they've taken kind of the good properties out of coconut oil and put it into its own liquid. So it's really energizing. Yeah, nothing wrong with it. If you want to supplement it, yeah, totally fine.
Okay. Are fast hydration packets like Drip Drop okay to take for exercising?
Yeah. Drip Drop, Noon tablets, those are a sneaky spot for artificial sweeteners though, so I always recommend watching that. But Liquid IV, Noon, Drip Drop, for the low blood pressure people, Element is the high sodium one of those.
Okay, I think you answered this. Has the debate between organic versus not organic foods been settled as to which one is better?
Organic is better. Yes.
Okay. Dragon fruit is good to lower cholesterol? Question mark.
Sure. Dragon fruit, there's no one specific food that'll be magic for lowering cholesterol, but dragon fruit has good potassium.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then somebody asked, what about GHEE?
Oh, ghee. Yeah, it's a butter. Still some saturated fat.
Okay.
Be mindful of the amount.
Okay. Do you have to hydrate throughout the day, or is it okay to drink your daily required water intake just twice a day? Half when you wake up at 6 a.m. and the other half 12 hours later at 6 p.m.
I think it's best to hydrate throughout the day. I don't know if you want, say the goal is 80 ounces. I don't know if you want to drink 40 ounces in one setting. That might be uncomfortable. So I would spread it out. At least break it into like 20 at a time throughout the day.
Okay. All right. Can you believe it? We got through it, Natalie. It's
Oh,
just
wow.
7 minutes after 1. Way to go,
Okay.
rapid fire. All right. Thanks, everybody. We had over 200 people stay on. We had over 300 on the call today. So appreciate everybody. And we will get a recording to this to you, PowerPoint slides, and also probably drop in a little bit later a survey just for you to give feedback to Natalie. She would love to hear from you. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Stay warm. Bye-bye.